Hi everyone, my name is Emma and welcome to today's new video. In today's video, I'm going to talk about the 24 best books that I have read in 2024. So this year I have read 115 books, and if you're just as me, very into statistics, here are some of my stats. From those 115 books, 13 of them were 5-star reads, and I think almost 18 of them were 4.5-star reads. So my average rating, as you can see, was a 3.7, which means that my reading year was quite good, to be quite frank. And I'm gonna talk first about the 5-star reads, and then I'm gonna slowly go into the 4.5-star reads. So let's start off with my 5-star reads. So probably the first 5-star read that I had this year was Kingdom of Ash. I finished this novel as the last Throne of Glass novel, and even though it was almost 1,000 pages, this was my longest book of this year. It was so good. The storylines, they just got together. We had all the characters. It was sad, it was happy, it was hopeful, it was everything that you want in a good fantasy book, especially if it's the ending of a series this big. I loved it. I think it was emotional. I cried like several times. So I definitely loved this one and I rated it 5 stars. Then I read The Glacier, and this was such a surprising read for me because I had this one on my TBR ever since I started reading, and I never thought, well, let's pick it up because it sounded boring. I didn't really know what it was about. Basically, this is The Handmaid's Tale meets Hunger Games with romance in there, and it was so good. This book ripped my heart out, stomped on it, put it back, and then ripped it out again, because it was a roller coaster and I loved every single second of it. It is like a thriller, I guess, but it's so good. Then I read When in Rome by Sarah Adams, and this took me the longest time to get through. I think it took me a month in total to get from page 1 to finishing it, even though it was so good. But every time I read it, it just made me feel stuff that I was like, oh my god, I cannot handle this right now, because the characters are so relatable, so funny, cute, wholesome, but also they have these struggles that are just very relatable. Not that I'm like a famous rock star, I'm not saying that, because this is about a rock star meeting like this small town guy, I guess. But they just had these inner struggles that I could like relate to, and it was just beautiful. It was a cute rom-com. I just really liked this novel. Then another surprising read for me, which was The Serpent and the Wings of Night. I did not expect to like this one. This was once again one of these novels that I was like, I need to read it this year because I've had it on my TBR for so long. But this is also kind of Hunger Games vibes. It is this girl who lives in a vampire world. She's not a vampire, her dad is the vampire king, but she goes into this rite where she can get something. So she wants to establish her dad's reign, but also get some powers of her own so that she is like fitting in, because she was always very vulnerable because she was a human in the vampire world. Very complicated. It takes some time to get into the book, but when you're in, it is so good, and the romance is chef's kiss. Brutal Prince was also a 5-star read of mine, which I was in doubt about if it was a 5-star read, because I definitely loved it. I absolutely adored it, but at first I gave it 4.5 stars. But then I went into other books and I kept thinking about this one. So I was like, I'm thinking about this one so often, this must be a 5-star for me. So I rated it 5 stars in the end. It is about Ada and Callum, and they're from rival mafia families. And that plotline was so good. They are true enemies to lovers. She tries to kill him on their wedding day. Okay, so that is how bad it is. It was just a perfect enemies to lovers, spicy, dark romance. Margot's got money troubles. Like, I'm not doing this in a chronological order actually, because these are just all over the place. This was the last 5-star read I think I had this year. I noticed myself going from a very heavy fantasy reading to more of a romance reading to literary fiction this year, because I don't know, my reading taste has developed in a way that I am very happy about actually, because I've read so many genres this year. So many, like thrillers, mysteries, romance, fantasy, literary fiction, poetry. I've read everything this year. And that's what I enjoy most about reading, the way that it fluctuates and that we can have so many different reading experiences in one year. But this was the last 5-star read, and this was a literary fiction. I think this is also the only, no, not the only, one of the few literary fictions that I have rated very highly, because before I could not focus on anything without romance. And I'm not saying smut, just romance. This one did not have romance, which is a good thing. This is about a girl who is a single mother because she gets knocked up by her college professor. Yeah, and she starts an OF account. Yeah, and that storyline on itself was crazy, but when you read this book, it gets so much crazier. It is absolutely insane. The things that happen in this book are funny, but also borderline insane. So I had the best time reading this one, honestly. I also read 2 books by the same author this year, and I've rated both of them 5 stars, which is the books by Ashley Poston, A Novel Love Story, and The 7 Years Slip. The 7 Years Slip is a book that so many people love. I've seen so many good reviews of this book, and that's why I picked it up, because when it came out and it was very hyped up, I was like, if it's that hyped up, I don't know if I will like it. But I read it, it was amazing. It's about this girl who moves into the apartment of her aunt who has passed away, and when she goes into the apartment, she goes back 7 years in time, and there's this guy living there, and she has a romance with him. And it is so enjoyable, like absolutely perfect. The romance is top notch. But then we have A Novel Love Story, and I've seen so much negative reviews of this one, but this was my first Ashley Poston book, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. This girl who is a bit depressed goes into this town which is from her favorite book, and there she meets a guy, and that guy is just grumpy, and it is so good. And they have these experiences together, like when it rains, she goes into a bar and she meets him and he helps her, and it's just so adorable, and I just loved it. I get why some people might not love this book as much as The 7 Years Slip, but in my opinion, it was so good because I just get the feeling of wanting to be in your favorite novel. Imagine if you were in your favorite novel and you could interact with the characters. That is insane. I would give up like my newborn child, if I would have one, to experience that. And that was what she got to experience. So I just got so into that feeling with her, and the way she describes all these little details and these characters and the storyline of her favorite book, it just made me relate to her so much. So I just loved it. Okay, I just loved it. So that's why I also rated this one 5 stars, but I get why some people will not rate it as highly. This is like an indie book, I think, because I have not seen this book very often on my TikTok. I don't think it's a very popular novel. It is Secrets and Seduction by Bianca Mauve. And this one was spicy. Like, it was a dark romance. It's a forbidden romance as well. It's a teacher-student romance, which sounds crazy. No worries, she's 20, he's like 27 or something, which is not completely the truth, but I'm not gonna spoil that for you. But it's a dark romance. It has some fantasy elements. It is, like I said, a student-teacher romance. She goes into boarding school because she's a juvenile. This novel is insane, but it's insanely good. The friendships, the characters, the romance, everything was top-notch. Loved it. Absolutely loved it. Like I said, it's an indie book, so it's not very popular, but I definitely recommend this one. It's so good. Then we come to Carrie Soto is Back. This novel was my motivational read. I have it now also as a paperback because I listened to this one as an audiobook, but I regretted that so much because this book was amazing. This is my motivational read. If I think I can't do something, I will go back into this book, read some quotes, and I'm like, you can do this. Carrie Soto is Back is about this tennis player. She was amazing growing up, but she was hungry. She wanted to do anything and everything to get where she wanted to come, which is the first in the World Open, I think. I'm not that much into tennis, but she got there, but the way she got there was questionable because she was insufferable to others, to be quite frank. She pushed away her dad. She did all these things to be the best. And then she retired. She got to reflect on some things. And then there's this new girl who is challenging her because she was the best for the longest time. But now that girl is challenging her for being the best. And she picks up tennis again and she starts training and reflecting on the past. And this storyline just did something to me because once again, I relate so much to Carrie Soto. She was my motivational character, but also such a relatable person, even though she could be insufferable at times, but she was the best, like absolutely the best. And I get that, like the mindset that she was in, like wanting to take back that place and be the best. And like this book was just motivational with reflective elements in it. So I ate this one up. Then I read A Court of Silver Flames, which is the last ACOTAR book, which is also Nesta's book. And when I read this, I was very much in doubt what I thought of the book because I really liked ACOTAR. I would not say that ACOTAR is a 5-star series for me, but I also read this novel after reading some Throne of Glass novels. So if you want more romance-heavy books, you should read ACOTAR, but if you're more into fantasy, you should read Throne of Glass. And I was very conflicted in what I liked most. Did I really like the romance or did I really like the fantasy? Because Nesta's book doesn't have as much fantasy, it is more smut. And if you look at my videos more often, you'll know that I am a very mixed reader. I don't really enjoy the smut. I prefer the romance. I don't mind the smut. It's not that I will put a book away for smut, but I also don't pick up books because of smut. So this book was very smutty, and I don't know if I enjoyed the romance as much as I thought I did because Cassian was kind of a dick in this novel. But I loved him from the previous novel, so I was very conflicted. But also, for Nessa's story, her redemption arc, this was an absolute 5-star read. Her struggles from beginning to end and how she coped with them and the female friendships and like the training her body to become more powerful because that empowers not only her body but also her mind. It was just such a powerful read from Nesta's perspective, which is why I rated it 5 stars. But I don't know if I like the romance, to be fair. And I also don't know if I like the fantasy aspects because there wasn't that much fantasy happening. So that's why this is a very conflicted one of mine. I do think I like this one the most out of the series because it was about Nesta and it had some stuff. It's very hard to compete, I think, with Akomov, but either Akomov or this one was my favorite in the series. I also read some books which are more on the literary side. Like I said, my taste transferred to literary fiction a bit more. So I picked up Yellowface and this novel was something else. It is by R.F. Kuang, and if you know her writing, it is like a unique kind. There are a few writers that you would actually think like, okay, I could read that and be shocked by the way they write. It's not a normal type of writing. It's just this, she takes you into the story and with the characters in a way that is undescribable if you haven't read it. So Yellowface follows this author who is a white author, and her Asian friend dies because she chokes on a pancake. Why did she have to do that? Like, that's insane. It's so funny. But she chokes on a pancake, and she is far more well accomplished as a writer than the white author. So when she dies, the white author goes into her desk because she has a manuscript for her new novel, which is about, I think it was Chinese history. She takes the manuscript, changes some stuff, and then publishes it under her own name. But she changes her name to make it sound more Chinese, I think. And she does all this crazy stuff. She goes on press tours and she tries to kind of change her ethnicity almost to fit the description of the book, which is insane. But you follow her story and it unravels and it goes. And it was such a undescribable read, and my first literary fiction, which made me kind of fall in love with it. So I gave it 5 stars. Absolutely amazing. And lastly, for the 5-star reads is My Dark Vanessa. This one was heavy. I would say it is a heavy read. It's about this girl who had a relationship with a teacher, and she's now in the future and she reflects back on it because this is in time of the Me Too discussion, and she reflects on whether or not she was groomed or was in a willing, consensual relationship. Which sounds insane, but when you read the story, you are kind of conflicted too. And it's just the way this is written, the way that you feel for Vanessa, the main character. It's just a sad book, but it's very valuable, I think, for all the young girls that have not necessarily these experiences, but I think it's very glorified nowadays to have like the big age gaps and I like this and this. But read this book, reflect on it, and just see what you think of it when you've read this book. So then we're going to the 4.5-star reads. So those were the 13 best books. Now I'm going to tell you the 11 4.5-star reads that I have, so that we have my 24 favorite reads of the year. First of all, As Good as Dead, and also the other one. What's it called? Good Girl, Bad Blood, I think. So the 2 Good Girls Guide to Murder books. These were, like, I read this first book when I started reading. So it has been 2 years actually before I was able to finish the series, which is crazy. But they were both very good. They follow kind of the same mystery of the trash bag killer. And Pip goes through it in these novels. It's a mystery, it's young adult, but especially the last book, As Good as Dead, very dark. I couldn't sleep at night after reading this book. So very dark, but it follows Pippa. It's sad, it's tense, but I would love a novella after this series to see what went on after the books. But unfortunately, we don't have that. But these are very action-filled, very thrilling. After that, we have Twisted Games, which is the second Twisted novel. So it comes after Twisted Love. And this is about Bridget and Reese. And Bridget is a royal and Reese is her bodyguard. So it's a bodyguard princess romance, which was amazing. Their romance was so good. This does have some smut scenes, but they were actually really good. And the storyline was enjoyable. Their relationship just, wow. Absolutely wow. Then we have The Storied Life of H.A. Vickery. This was once again a literary fiction novel that I was so surprised about. I saw this on Hayley Pham's channel and I did not expect to like it the way I did, because the first 50 or so pages, I was so annoyed. I was like, when is this gonna pick up? I don't care, I don't wanna read this. I almost put it down, but then I continued to read. It was so good. It's about this old guy who is strange, to say the least, and he adopts a girl, and it's about their relationship, but also like their general life, and it's about life in general, which sounds weird when I say it like that, but it is just such a reflective and good book. I can't really tell you what it's about. You just need to read it. Please do, and don't make the same mistake as I did. Then we have Cursed Fates, which is the 5th novel, I think, in the Zodiac Academy series. So I'm trying to get through that series. Well, I wanted to do it this year, but those books were thick as fuck. So I'm gonna do it next year as well. But this novel, I don't even know where it ended because the storyline just flows through the books. You don't have like a specific time where it cuts off. I just remember this had the most like entertainment. It was, I think, Lance, Orion, and Darcy. Wow, this is so messy. Darcy and Lance Orion, their romance. Darius and Tori, their romance. It was just very good. Very good novel. Then we have Lightlark, and this was such a surprising read for me because this was once again the kind of read that I had been putting off for years now. It was so good. It's a fantasy, it's a YA fantasy. It's about Isla, and she goes to this island that reappears every 100 years to play kind of like a Hunger Games style game. One ruler has to die. You have 6 rulers or 5 or 6 rulers. She has to work together. There's some romance, a very good plot twist at the end. Actually, many plot twists. I just read this one so fast because it was so good, and I'm now gonna be reading the 2nd book as well. After that comes The Perfect Son by Frida McFadden. This is once again a thriller. A mum suspects her son of being a serial killer, and she tries to find out if he is the killer that she thinks he is. What a book. And the plot twist, classic Frida McFadden style. Loved it. And the ending, the absolute ending, insane. Then comes Finale, which is the last Caraval book. I just love the way that this series ended. I do think this one could have been a little bit shorter. I did like seeing Jax in this one, and the plot lines just wrapped together really nicely. So I'm very pleasantly surprised by how this book ended, and I can't wait to read the novella that comes after this one. Then I have Tower of Dawn, which is a Throne of Glass novel. This was probably, people are gonna say I'm insane. This was probably my favorite novel of the Throne of Glass series after The Assassin's Blade and Kingdom of Ash. I loved it. I know it's Cowell's story and everyone seems to hate Cowell. I didn't care. I loved this world. I loved the plot lines. I loved Nezrin and Cowell, and also Irene. I liked the whole plot line of the tower, and like the darkness and the storyline with like the royal family. Absolutely perfect. I loved it. Absolutely loved it. And I don't get why people don't love it, to be quite frank. Then I have Bright by Ellie Hazelwood. This was her first, it's called a paranormal romance, but I would just call it a romantasy. She's a vampire, he's a werewolf, they have an arranged marriage, they're kind of enemies, I guess. She is a very likable character, but also it's classic Ellie Hazelwood romance with a miscommunication trope, which I didn't like as much, which is why it's not a 5-star. Nonetheless, it was such a great book. Like, I enjoyed the storyline. It was about her and the human world and her development as a person, but also in her relationship. I just think Ellie Hazelwood writes the perfect books. And then lastly, Addicted to You, which is a novel about 2 people who both have addictions. She is addicted to sex and he is addicted to alcohol. Wow, I wanted to say drugs, but I was like, which kind of drugs? Alcohol. He has an alcohol addiction, and they get into this relationship for their parents to let them believe everything is all right with them, and then they live together and they can kind of do their own thing while being in this relationship, which is not really a relationship. But they fall in love, but they also realize we enable each other and something is not right with us, and like we need to change, and you just follow their relationship, which is very hurtful, very toxic, very like it's annoying almost to read about because they relapse and like so much happens between them and you kind of root for them, but also just not because you know they're not right for each other, but you love them, which is a very conflicting book in my opinion. It's just like a heavy book, very heavy, but it's really well written, so I did really enjoy it. And those are my 24 books of this year. It has been a crazy year. Like I said, 115 books is absolutely insane. I do want to up my reading goal next year though, so I'm gonna be trying to read 125 books in 2025, which I hope that will work out, and if it doesn't, that's also fine. But I just love this reading year. I think this year was a very amazing reading year for me, and I enjoyed so many good books. I enjoyed so many new writers. I read amazing stuff, and I hope you have too. So if you like this video, like and comment and let me know which books of these that you have read, or if you have other books that you think I should read. I would love to hear your thoughts. So happy New Year, happy 2025. Hopefully you'll have the best reading year, and thank you so much for watching. Bye bye.